You're on DevSecOps, the good, the bad, the ugly. And today I have with me a special guest, Troy Marshall.
Hey, Zach. Good morning.
Good morning, Troy. Appreciate you joining me. We're up bright and early, and man, it's a little bit harder given the fact that we're still stuck in our home, not leaving the office we were just talking about.
Yeah,
So,
it sure is. That long commute used to be a great motivation to get up early, but without that, it's a little more difficult.
right, and you had a little bit of time for your eyes to actually open up, right?
Yeah, get a couple cups of coffee in you before you reach the office. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Troy, the first thing I wanted to just chat about today, I know you know one of your areas of focus has been infrastructure as code.
Yes.
So, I just wanted to for those that aren't really aware of maybe, hey, what is infrastructure as code when people are talking about that? If you can kind of give a high level overview, and then if you could also just talk about what you guys have been doing there, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So infrastructure as code or software-defined infrastructure is just what it sounds like, right? It's the expression of your infrastructure, primarily virtual infrastructure, especially in public and private cloud through software. And so um, that could be through uh, tools such as Terraform, where that the tool is used to express. So, for example, in AWS.
Right.
You may use the software-defined infrastructure as code to express everything that you need to run an application in AWS, an entire stack, starting from a VPC to your subnet to all your network components, servers, databases.
Mm-hmm.
Through infrastructure as code, you're able to express all of that in code through software. And so it allows you to implement many of the same security and quality practices that you implement in typical software development in the development of your infrastructure. And so you can do things such as applying linters to your infrastructure to be able to identify common misconfigurations of your infrastructure, that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, and the great thing is that it allows a lot of, well, it allows repeatability, right?
Right.
Anytime you have someone, a human, logging in, clicking buttons, uh, it, it, it introduces the opportunity for error.
Right.
And so what you want through infrastructure as code is repeatability, and it gets you to, in the cloud, it enables what we refer to as ephemeral infrastructure, right? So you want infrastructure that's short-lived, it serves its purposes, and when it's time to modify that infrastructure, whether it's a load balancer or a server, you don't patch it, you don't update what's in place. You stand up a new one and destroy what's there, right? And so you'll often hear people refer to treating virtual servers as cattle and not pets, right? And so the infrastructure as code is what allows you to operate that ephemeral infrastructure, but also to operate at the pace that DevOps demands,
Right.
where you have companies that are deploying dozens of times a day to production. You don't have time for someone to go in and manually tweak
Yep.
infrastructure, nor do you have um, the luxury of the errors that can introduce. And so infrastructure as code is a critical component of any cloud-based, whether private or public cloud application.
Yeah, no, that's great. That makes perfect sense, and appreciate that overview. What types of off the cuff here, Troy? What types of security controls do you try focusing on?
Yeah, great question. This is an area where there's not a ton of vendor support. There's some, don't get me wrong, that we use some tools that allow us, static linting tools that allow us to look at our infrastructure as code and identify common misconfigurations. Where we're lacking some things and where we still have the human eye is required is for complex flows. So for example, my tools can tell me if um, if an IAM policy has a specific, for example, in AWS, let's say an IAM policy has a principal star, which means everyone, regardless of what account you're in. But it can't tell me a lot of other things about whether or not that piece of infrastructure would ever be accessible, right? And so It's a lot like static code analysis tools early on, where they could find very simple issues within very, very static sets, but not complex data flow analysis. And it's the same thing with a lot of the linting tools. And so we use secure code reviews as a primary method for enhancing the static linting. I like to refer to it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, okay, that's great. Shifting a little bit here, Troy, to now, just your software development, or just practices there. How have you found, or what methods have you found to be best when trying to meet developers where they're at?
Wow. So I thought that there was a place. In my last company, that place was Jenkins. And you met the developers in Jenkins. And so, that was the only place you talked to the developers. You worked with the developers in Jenkins. Everything you had to work there.
Right.
But what I found is that's not where all the developers like to hang out. And so with my current company, we're not a huge Jenkins shop. We use other CI/CD, and there's a plethora of them. And so there's not a single central pipeline. And so we meet our developers in different places here. We meet developers at the pull request. That's a very common place to meet developers here. We use a Git workflow. Most every team uses some sort of variation of Git flow, and you will see developers, they submit small increments in pull requests. And really that's the place where we try to meet them, is at that smallest increment at the pull request. And so that's where we have other developers who are performing secure code reviews, right? And so if we're able to present to them static analysis, software composition analysis data, it helps to supplement that secure code review process. Now, don't get me wrong, we're still doing things in the pipeline, right? Like we're still doing SCA in the pipeline, we're still doing DAST, but a lot of those results are now being presented in the pull request rather than in the CI/CD system.
Right.
So that's one place, and another place is at you can't even really call it an IDE anymore. So with so many of the scripting languages that are common today, Node.js or Python, developers aren't using full-blown Eclipse IDE, right? They're using lighter weight editors such as Visual Studio Code or Atom, and so we're also trying to find ways to meet them there. There's a lot of traditional, if you think about static application security testing tools, many of them have great support for your traditional heavyweight IDEs, but we're now starting to see some support for those lighter weight editors as well.
Right. No, that's great. Actually, I just started learning Golang, and I'm using Visual Studio Code. So
Yep.
Exact reason. So looking at ways that you can also, you just talked about, right, you're trying to implement controls at the water cooler more where developers are hanging out. What types of training have you maybe developed as well to help bridge that gap?
Yeah, we found a mix of training modalities is most effective, and I think everyone can appreciate this. No one learns in the exact same way, and no one learns at the exact same time. And so we do offer things like traditional training classes. Come to class for a couple days and learn how to securely code in JavaScript, right? We offer those. And some people react really well to that sort of training. But the problem with that is if you offer it 2 or 3 times a year, are you offering it at the right time? And so we also offer other modalities, recorded training. We try to offer hands-on workshops. In my current company, we do a lot of lunch and learns. And so it's very informal training. And so we have teams every week or two who come and talk about what they're doing. And so whether it be how we've learned to use the new the CDK to develop our AWS infrastructure, or how we're using React.js to build this single page application. They present that knowledge and they share that knowledge through lunch and learns. We also have found really effective hackathons, having people come in hands-on, give them a problem to solve, and provide a theme around that problem, right? So, it's really a mix. And something else that I do within my team, within the DevSecOps team, and I know a lot of people are gonna cringe at the fact that we have a DevSecOps team. I know. Yeah,
That's one of
but
my favorite questions of, hey, what do you think of the name, right? Because there's
yeah,
so
and
many.
I'll circle back around to what I think about that name, and I've heard some arguments against it. But we also offer we have some consultants, and all they do is consult with the team. That's their job, and so they can also provide that side by side, hands-on, on-the-job training, right, and mentoring to the developers because our developers aren't security experts, right? But they need to be. They need to know just enough to secure their applications and their infrastructure in the cloud. And so, we try to meet them where they are and meet them when they need us.
Yeah. No, I mean, our CTO did a blog on Forbes and where it was, developers are the front line of security today.
Yes.
Right? I mean, they are, right, and how we're empowering them. Always like to think of it that way, right? They truly are. So going back to kind of close it out, what is your thoughts on the name DevSecOps?
So I think it's fine. I view DevSecOps as enabling the development teams to own the security of the products that they develop, operate, and maintain. And we're not here to own security. We're here to enable the DevOps teams to own the security. And that's really what I think the mission of security within the context of DevOps is. So call it DevSecOps, call it secure DevOps, rugged DevOps, Sec DevOps, call it whatever you want. But anyone who has tried to hire security people now knows that there aren't enough security people. And so
Yep.
only by enabling the developers who are on the front lines are you going to be successful in security nowadays.
Absolutely. I think the number that I hear, frequently, it's 100-to-1, right? 100 developers, one security guy. So
Right.
or gal. But
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, hey, this is great, Troy. Appreciate your time and being willing to jump on here and share some of your thoughts around, what you guys are doing there.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach.